Hey y'all, how are you doing? I'm great. Thank you so much for asking. It's me, Kim, and I'm back for another video. This video is going to be a review of the Lion King remake. And I'm gonna be honest, right up front. I love the original Lion King. It came out in 1994 when I was 5 years old, and it's truly the first movie that I ever remember loving. I knew every word. I remembered every single lyric. It's flawless to me. The first version of The Lion King is the highest grossing hand-drawn animated film of all time. So a lot of other people love it too. So that's why when I first heard that there was going to be a live action remake, I wasn't too jazzed. I wasn't super excited about it. I love Beyonce. I love Donald Glover. I think Jon Favreau is a really good director. I just wasn't overly enthused. I mean, how could you top what we've already been given? And then we got those trailers. And girl, the trailers looked horrible. They were so boring and the colors were muted and it just looked dull and lifeless. And I was like, okay, y'all are playing. And then we got the first round of reviews and the critics hate this movie. I mean, on Metacritic right now, it has about a 56% or maybe 55. And then on Rotten Tomatoes, it has 56 or 55%. You guys, that's disastrous. Okay. There are some Disney execs who are shitting their pants right now. It's so bad. But I always want to be fair. You know, I don't want to just judge things off of what my initial instincts are. So last night, the first night that it was available, open to the public to view, I went, and honestly, it's not terrible. It is not nearly as bad as I was expecting. I read lots and lots of reviews. I listened to some podcasts about it. It's really not that bad, but it's not great. And the original is great. The source material for this film is exceptional. And I think that's where people are just extremely disappointed. Let's get into the film. The animation of this film is gorgeous. So I don't really understand the term live action when it's not live action. It just looks like live action. It's all animated, but that animation is exceptional. It's spectacular. The opening scene of the remake is basically a shot-for-shot recreation of what happened in the original. And I can't decide if that's really cool or kind of lazy. All I can say is it was executed beautifully. It looked so good, and that immediately drew me in. So there are a few shots of elephants walking early on. And we zoom in on the elephants, and there's one exact replica shot where an elephant puts its giant hoof down. Is that what they're called? Anyways, and you see a close-up of the texture of that elephant skin. Wow, I was really impressed by that. It was so great. The lions look incredible. Early on, we see Scar, and Scar looks legitimately scary, like really creepy. And they avoided the thing that the original does where they denote evil spirit or evil intentions by making Scar darker in the original. And you know, like, if you're a woke person, you have to be, oh, okay, the evil people are always darker. You know, we want to avoid that. And they definitely avoided that and made Scar look creepy in a different kind of way. His mane is kind of mangy, and he just doesn't look as regal as Mufasa looks. This movie opens with the christening of Simba. I guess it's not a christening because these are lions, but basically Simba is born, and baby Simba looked adorable. I love animals. I love to watch animal videos on YouTube and the little animal videos on Netflix. And this kind of reminded me of one of those animal videos, but I remember sitting there and being like, oh, I want a baby lion. They just look so adorable. And the eyes were just glistening and cute. I cannot stress enough what a great job that the animators did. How difficult must it be to animate all those hairs and have them moving the way that real hair moves? And then to animate eyes and have the little glossy look in the eyes. I just think, I don't know, whoever did that, they need to get all the praise, okay? They need to be doing the interviews, because that's the beauty of this film. But yeah, this movie definitely does feel like an IMAX nature movie that you would go see at a science museum. And that's kind of a letdown. It's beautiful to see, but the heart isn't there. And early on in the movie, we run into a central problem. Animals do not show emotions like humans do. So we hear these human voices with vocal inflections and sadness and eagerness and longing, but the faces are cat faces, like bland cat faces. And we see the eyes doing eye stuff, you know, the way that real eyes move, and they're glossy, but they're dead eyes because they're animals and they're not humans. I really liked this quote from a reviewer named Chris Hewitt. He said, "The Lion King has never been about animal behavior, but about human behavior as attributed to animals. When Simba squirms while Mother Sarabi grooms him, we're meant to recognize the wriggling of a human child, not an animal child." And that really sums it up. So maybe this is just, I wonder if children have the same response, because maybe as an adult, I am so used to in animation seeing animals recreate human expression, squinting, smiling, smirking. That takes me out of the storytelling. It takes me out of the flow of this film, because I'm just like, he's just looking at me. Like, the line is just looking at me. I need more. Another thing about the verisimilitude of the animation is it's harder to ignore just the science stuff when it comes to the animals. For example, Simba goes off and he puts himself into self-imposed exile. And he meets up with Timon and Pumbaa, and they have to start eating grubs and worms and stuff like that. And in my mind, I'm like, Simba would be dead. Like, he would not make it. Okay? Like, he's a carnivore. The music is really what makes this property. This particular Disney item is made by the songs. And because we have Donald Glover and Beyonce, who are two exceptional musicians, yes, I'm including Donald Glover in that, I just expected the music to be wonderful. Next level, okay? Take me to an 11. It wasn't an 11. Every single song in this remake is worse than the original, except one, kinda, but we'll get into that later. And by the way, we're just gonna take a second to go into an Elton John stan moment. Incredible, an unparalleled career. It is remarkable that this man has cranked out as many hits as he does. He's so prolific, and he's managed to be unproblematic all these years. You love to see it. I did really like the new I Just Can't Wait to Be King. I do think it's not quite as good as the original, but I think the new version is really, really good. And young Simba is great. Put that kid in more stuff. He's so good. It just, you know, nature is boring compared to animation. It just is. I went back and watched the original, and the vibrant colors and the choreography of the animals, and it has references to Busby Berkeley, who did these large scale kind of kaleidoscopic choreographed scenes. It was so fun and enjoyable. And the new version is very fun and enjoyable. It just wasn't an 11, but on its own, really good, really strong. And there's another issue with another huge song in this movie. So Can You Feel the Love Tonight is super important. That's when we see Nala and Simba falling in love, about to get together, just like Zazu said. And in the original, we feel it because Nala is kind of giving Simba bedroom eyes, you know, and they're flirting. But in the remake, there's no bedroom eyes because they're animals. So what we get is dead cat eyes again. And so the warmth is not there. But what I will say is Beyonce sang that song. Beyonce is an exceptional vocalist, duh, we all know that, but she does do a lot of growling. You know, she loves projection and she loves a growl, and that works. But in Can You Feel the Love Tonight, the lightness of Beyonce's voice, the sweetness in her tone and that falsetto, I was like, girl, you better sing this song, Beyonce. Just another note about the original version of this film. We don't give Jason Weaver enough. We need to, I know he was on the Strong Black Lead podcast, Netflix's podcast, and I'm so glad they did that. Little Jason Weaver was singing his behind off in the original Lion King. And you know, he was also little Michael Jackson in Jackson's An American Dream. So great. I think it's so unfortunate the way that we dispose of child stars, but wow. And another thing that we have to give the remake props on is we don't have any of that ghost singing stuff. So in the original, Jonathan Taylor Thomas, do you remember JTT? Okay. Hello, millennials, older millennials. JTT, you know, remember that craze? He did the voice of the acting of young Simba, and Jason Weaver did the singing. Now, y'all know that don't make sense because Jason Weaver is also a great actor. So why you think that one person was the face of Simba and the other person was the singing voice? Oh, girl, we know. And they did that a couple of times in the original Lion King, where a white actor would do the acting parts and then a black singer would come in. And it's like, that's problematic. I'm really glad that we had unity in the remake. I was pretty bummed out that they basically cut Be Prepared in the remake. I love the original Be Prepared. It kind of has that kind of calypso rhythm to it, and that animated section was so good and fun. I don't know. They kind of, I understand why they had to redo it the way that they did, because the original Be Prepared is just, you can't remake it in a lifelike way. I get it. I just really miss that song. Let's go to Hakuna Matata now. It is notably worse than the original. And I know that Billy Eichner, who plays Timon, and Seth Rogen, who plays Pumbaa, have been getting a lot of love. And I don't know why. I don't know. They are not nearly as good. Not nearly as good as Nathan Lane and Ernie Sabella in the original. Everybody was talking in the reviews about the jokes and the chemistry that they had. Where I did chuckle a couple of times at Billy Eichner's ad-libs, but no, not nearly as good. And that made a song like Hakuna Matata, which is such a fun, appropriative song. It was so bad that I grimaced in the theater. Seth Rogen cannot sing. He cannot sing, and he was just doing Seth Rogen, and his Seth Rogen was just a worse version of Ernie Sabella. We also need to talk about how weak Donald Glover's vocals were in this film. Now, I was super surprised by that because I love Donald Glover music. Childish Gambino music. I also really like Guava Island. I feel like y'all slept on Guava Island. We need to give him his due for that. However, the vocals, in these songs, maybe it just wasn't a good match. The songs weren't good for him, but he didn't sound good. And he especially didn't sound good when he was trying to keep up with Beyonce. It was so distracting. I was like, have I been listening wrong to Donald Glover all these years? You know, something we might have been gassing up Donald Glover's vocals a bit much, just maybe a bit too much. The little musical interludes between Timon and Pumbaa, which you have come to expect, are bad because Seth Rogen can't sing. And Billy Eichner is actually pretty good. He has a pretty good voice. It just isn't as effervescent. It wasn't as wonderful as Nathan Lane, who, you know, is a Broadway star. And now it's time for another harsh truth. Spirit is not a great song. It's not a great song, you guys. It's an okay song. You know, if it comes on, I'm not going to rush to switch it off, but it's a really basic, watered down gospel song. It feels like a less good version of Will You Be There by Michael Jackson from the Free Willy soundtrack. That's what Spirit sounds like, but like a notably worse version. And obviously Beyonce always turns in a spectacular vocal performance, but everything around it is real bland and boring. And another thing Beyonce does is she tries to convince us that mediocre songs are good with gorgeous visuals. The Spirit video is beautiful. Nobody's gonna deny that, but that song is bland. It is bland. And I know why they made it. Beyonce wants an Oscar. I get it, girl. Give Beyonce her Oscar, but not for this. It's not good. But on the bright side, have y'all listened to The Gift? That musical project inspired by this? So I came home, and by the time that I came home from the movie theater, The Gift was already out on iTunes. So I streamed it. Oh, okay. Now it felt good because I felt bad about how much I dislike Spirit, but The Gift is banging. Beyonce, when she is in her bag, is one of the finest musicians and musical curators we have. Hands down, point blank period. That is a spectacular project. It's so good. And instead of giving us that bland, lifeless Spirit, we should have gotten bigger. Bigger is where it's at. And I just saw right before I sat down to record that she released an extended video that puts Spirit and Bigger together. I'm glad, because bigger is where it's at. That whole project is wonderful. There have been rumors that Beyonce has wanted to do an Afrobeats album for a long time. After we got Grown Woman, after that was on Self-Titled, right? It was a bonus track on Self-Titled. The rumor was she had recorded a whole Afrobeats album, but it never came out because, you know, Beyonce is set on world domination. But I'm really glad that Beyonce had an opportunity to put this project together, because I will just say, as a Black American, a real descendant of US-based slaves on both sides, that I did grow up with certain negative ideas about the continent of Africa and Africans. You know, even it's so crazy, right? Because we grew up wearing kente cloth during Black History Month and all that, but we still held these ideas about what Africa is and its backwardness or whatever. I'm so glad that as an adult, I've had the opportunity to undo that stuff. And I'm glad that kids now have the opportunity to see, like, the continent of Africa, which, you know, it's not one thing, but how vibrant it is, the beauty of the culture that we are sharing. There's like a cross diasporic exchange that I'm so glad is happening. I do kind of feel like Beyonce was drawn to The Lion King as a project because it would give her the opportunity to put out something like The Gift. If Beyonce is going to win an Oscar or whatever, she should not win it for Spirit. I'm sorry, that song sucks. But for The Gift, yes. With the exception of the animation, and that is a huge exception, everything about this remake is just worse than the original. It's just not as good. One thing I thought was interesting was Jon Favreau and the makers of this film have the opportunity to do something completely new and different and interesting. And they didn't do that. Often they did shot for shot, line for line recreations of the original, which is great if your aim is just to show off how good the animation is, but it just didn't give us the same heart or feeling. And it's also really fascinating to me that when it comes to the voices, they could have gone in any direction, switched it up a little bit. But basically what they did was choose worse versions of the original voice actors. So you just get knockoffs. Knock off Zazu, knock off Timon and Pumbaa. There's a real missed opportunity there. And of course, Mufasa was great, but that is the same actor. James Earl Jones did it 25 years ago too. And by the way, have y'all seen James Earl Jones? Like, it is interesting to me that we have not seen him. And I hope that's because he's older and unbothered and not because he's ailing. But he did a really wonderful job recreating basically the exact same lines from the original. And we got a new Sarabi because the first Sarabi unfortunately passed away. But Alfre Woodard is an icon. We love her. She did a great job. Again, young Simba did a great job. Young Nala was pretty good too. Timon and Pumbaa, okay. And the harsh truth, and you know, it's honesty hour. The harsh truth is Donald Glover and Beyonce, and Beyonce was the weakest link when it comes to the acting. It just wasn't there. And look, I feel Beyonce as a fellow over-enunciator. I do. But that over-enunciation when trying to act, oh, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And it just feels like Beyonce is approaching these lines. She's so tight. You know, it's like, you gotta be loosen up, you know, free yourself a little bit. And it does feel like there's a disconnect, like that training and that rigor that we love Beyonce for. It really comes out in those flat line deliveries. I just needed more life. And Donald Glover, as good as an actor as I think he is, it was flat too. I needed something else from them. And I'm not trying to start any diasporic representation wars. I'll just say it is interesting to me, notable, and maybe just a tad bit unfortunate that we didn't get more vocal talent that actually comes from the continent of Africa. Some West African, Nigerian, Ghanaian, like, we get a lot of American accents in this film and a lot of British accents in this film. And I know because of colonization, a lot of people from West Africa have kind of Britishy accents, but it's not. It's definitely different, right? So I definitely think that that's something to consider. Not trying to start any wars. Please don't do this in the comments. Another thing that struck me early on about this movie is it's kind of scary. It's pretty dark. And I don't remember feeling as scared or tense while watching the original. And I think that comes from the lifelike qualities of those animals, because it is different when, you know, a little animated, little baby Simba is running away. You're like, oh, this is just a cartoon. But like when a real angry looking, mean looking hyena is chasing after a real lifelike little baby lion, it makes you feel. And then, like I said before, Scar looks really creepy and scary. It's just like the tone of this film is darker. I knew, as we all do, that Mufasa is going to die in a really horrific and terrifying way. I knew it was coming, and I was still horrified. It is horrifying to watch basically a real life lion fall to his death. I'm sorry. It just is. And maybe because I love animals, and maybe because I watch a lot of animal shows, but I'll tell you, I wouldn't want a little kid to see that. I remember watching a little YouTube videos with my nieces, and we were watching like a walrus video, and you can actually look this up. But it turned out to be a video of walruses falling off a cliff to their deaths. And I covered that screen so fast because I don't want little, but maybe I am underestimating the ability of children to metabolize those kinds of images. All I know is as an adult, it was traumatizing to me. So I don't know how it's going to work with little kids. When it's just hand-drawn animation, you can kind of remove yourself and suspend disbelief more easily. It just feels super real in this remake. But another thing about the dark tone of this movie is I was sitting there after Scar had taken over and he was basically abusing the lionesses. And I remember sitting there thinking like, man, I wish Sarabi would stab him. You know? Like I want some real vengeance. But, you know, this is still a children's movie, you know. Adulthood changes you. The stampede scene in this movie is still wonderful. The scene where Mufasa dies is heartrending. It feels so real. I experienced those emotions viscerally. That's how real it felt. Wonderful execution. Even though we all knew what was going to happen, I was really, really in it. While watching the remake, I did for the first time really think about the core messages and themes. And this is a great movie, you guys. It's so good. I thought there were really positive messages about masculinity when Mufasa is saying, you don't always have to prove how brave you are. I'm only brave when I need to be brave. I thought that was so good. I think that this is the best explanation of death that children can metabolize that I've ever seen. It's so thoughtful and heartfelt and clear. The idea of the circle of life. Death is really scary for adults, and often we don't want to broach it with children. But what you will find is children are much more open to the concept of death and the idea. And so having the idea of the circle of life in there, and it's not scary, it's not creepy, it's just a thing that happens, and it has to happen for us to all move forward. Oh, that hit me. That hit me in the gut. And I did, for the first time while watching this, think of the contemporary political meaning that we can map on to the messaging of The Lion King. When Mufasa is talking about using resources equitably, right? Like, you have to feed on the antelopes in order to sustain yourself, but you're not overkilling. You're using what you need and not more than that. And ultimately, like, the final battle is Scar and the hyenas are too greedy. They're using too much. And that is what causes their downfall. And we also get Timon and Pumbaa with their nihilism and their individualism, and they're converted by Simba and the Pride Lands and that ethos of community consciousness. Even though the lions are dominators, they are at the top of the food chain, they're the predators. But I did like, I'm sure nobody else really got this from it, but I saw the messaging, okay? Stop being so damn greedy. The animation team for this film, hands down, deserves every single award imaginable. Do they have animator awards, like a special animator awards group? They deserve all of that. Give them an Oscar, give them a Golden Globe. It was so amazing. There is a scene, which is a new scene, I think, where Simba is walking on sand. He's walking atop sand dunes, and you can see his little baby paws sink into the sand. Oh, I was so amazed by that. Oh, and anytime there was water, how awesome and lifelike all of the water. There's waterfalls, there's just pools of water, there's little ponds and creeks or whatever. Amazing. So there was a cinematographer for this film. I can't remember what his name was. And I did have a question about what does a cinematographer do in an animated film? But I will say there are lots of gorgeous shots in this film, just beautiful, and lots of interesting camera moves, even though there's not a real camera, I don't think. It was really cool to look at, especially, so I loved the opening scene. Great. I also loved that fight. There's the big fight between Simba and Scar at the end. Beautiful. And the colors and the lifelike way that the lions are moving and attacking each other. And then we see the fire in the background. That was so cool. All right, so this new movie is 30 to 40 minutes longer than the original. And I gotta say, I don't know where that 30 to 40 minutes went. I do remember an important addition of we see after Scar has taken over the way that the lions are suffering and they're all skinny because they're starving and because Scar and the hyenas are being greedy and they're eating up all the food. And so the lionesses are starving. I thought that was an interesting little thing. And we see Nala escape to go find help, but that's like 5 minutes. I don't know where the other 25, 35 minutes of this film went. And I don't think that that's a good thing. Generally, the script was the same, but there were a few subtle changes, and the changes that were made really didn't take away anything from it. I don't know if they added a whole lot, but they definitely didn't detract. Back to this film being a little bit darker and scarier, I felt like Scar's death was more gruesome. We knew in the original that Scar basically was killed by the hyenas. In the remake, it just felt more, I don't know, like creepy, scary, frightening. And at the end, Nala and Simba get together. Obviously, like that's how the story goes. And they have a cute little baby. And so it's the circle of life again. One thing that did take me out of it as an adult was now that I know the biology of like Nala and Simba were brother and sister, and it made it a little creepy, but they did have a cute little incest baby cub. The Lion King story is really good. It's based off of Shakespeare's Hamlet, and I do think that the remake feels more Shakespearean because it is darker, it is gloomier. I just don't know if it was enough. I don't know if it was enough to justify a remake. So on one hand, I do know that from my interactions with kids, that they find a lot of old school hand-drawn animation to be really cheesy and corny looking. So they will probably, well, I don't really know. Maybe they will be able to latch on to this film in a different way because of how advanced the technology is. But ultimately, this remake does just feel like an opportunity to show off this cool, super cool new technology. And like, I don't know if that justifies it. And also, this isn't Disney's first live action remake. I haven't seen any of the other ones because why would I do that? So is all of the technology that we see here brand new? Because if it is brand new, then I get it, right? Show it off, right? It deserves to be seen. But if it's not, I don't know why Disney is doing this. I know because this movie is going to make $1 billion. It just is. We know that. It's a cash grab. And I think that's what gets a lot of people down, is that Disney is going to reuse all of their old IP, the tried and true formulations, just to get more money from us, to sell more tickets, to sell more merch. And it's like, okay, whatever. Capitalism is going to capitalize. Maybe we needed to wait a few more years to figure out how to make the animals look less dead inside. And like I said, a lot of the voice acting for me just wasn't great. It wasn't transcendent. And I do think that if you're going to remake just a gorgeous piece of work, that you need to add something new and different to it outside of just check out our cool new tools. Bring new life to it. Take us to a new plane. The only way that we were really elevated in this film was with the animation, but that's not enough. That being said, I did enjoy this movie. I often felt myself being engrossed in it. I jumped a few times. I knew exactly what was going to happen. Why did I jump? But I did. The movie is good. It's enjoyable. And I wouldn't try to talk anybody out of seeing it. Not at all. In fact, I will probably see it again with children. So while I do understand some of the more scathing reviews, it's not the worst movie I've ever seen, not by far. So, go see it. That's all I have to say about that. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to head on over to the Patreon. That's where I upload all of the bonus content, and that bonus content, honestly, is what gives me the freedom to do these videos, so I don't have to just crank out videos just to do them. I can go over there and say whatever's on my heart, so go over there. Thank you to each and every Patreon supporter. I love and appreciate you. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Leave a comment. Please, no diaspora wars. Please, I'm begging you. Please don't do that. Send me an email. Send me a message on Instagram or Twitter. Buy some merch. Sign up for the email newsletter. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.